Hello there and welcome into the World Cricket Show with myself, Andrew McLean, and my co-host, Rob Findlay. And we're going to be talking about things that are going on in the world of cricket. But of course, Rob's in Australia and and he is an Australian and I'm a Kiwi, of course, but I live in Bali. And there's a series that's just finished yesterday between New Zealand and Australia, and from a New Zealand perspective, wasn't very pretty reading in the end. Rob, we got beaten pretty badly. Although it must be said, in the very first match, looked like New Zealand had every chance of winning that first match. What do we get? Like more than 200, 219 or thereabouts. But Tim David, I mean, wow. What did he score? 31 off 10 balls or something to bring the Aussies home, and he may not have even have played for Australia. He was he was born in Singapore, wasn't he? Are you there, Rob? Looks like we've just lost Rob there. So we'll just wait for Rob to come back. But yes, New Zealand and Australia have just finished a T20 series. It just finished yesterday afternoon in New Zealand in Auckland. And from a New Zealand perspective, it was a rain affected match in the third match, and New Zealand lost on the Duckworth-Lewis-Stern method, which meant that they actually ended up losing the whole series 3-0. But Rob's back now. Rob, I was just saying, New Zealand ended up losing that series against Australia 3-0 in the end. But it looked very good. It looked very promising after New Zealand batted first in the first match, the match in Wellington. Mm-hmm. Scoring, I think it was about 219, I think it was in the end, or thereabouts. But Tim David, what a player he is, and he might have been lost to Australia or found, whichever way you want to look at it, because he was born in Singapore. But wow, what a guy to come in and score. Was it 31 off 10 balls to bring it home for Australia? It was a magnificent match, wasn't it?
It was super exciting. I watched the whole match, and I thought that the game would ebb and flow back and forth between New Zealand and Australia. I thought we were done with about 10 overs to go in our innings as Australians. So it certainly was pulled out of the hat, I think. And absolutely, Tim David is someone who's been on the scene for about a year or two here and came out of relative obscurity, to your point. Didn't come through a normal system or a junior cricket system, I guess, or maybe wasn't born here at least. So he certainly saved the day and stood up when he needed to. And I think he snuck into the side, as you said, but he actually needs to have a performance like that to show the team and the world what he can do. And he'll be aiming for T20 World Cups and other things now, and hopefully embed himself in the side. But super exciting series. I love watching the New Zealand pitches and venues and crowds. It's always unique, and the conditions there are pretty interesting when it gets a bit cold and wet, like it did yesterday.
Yeah, disappointing, I guess, for the Eden Park crowd, particularly with that being a day match. The final one, the Friday night one, of course, was the sort of your regular 7 o'clock kickoff. That was yesterday. They played in the afternoon, and there was a bit of rain, which tends to happen in Auckland. It rains most days pretty much in Auckland, so weather affected. But I mean, Rob, from your standpoint, I as you know, I wasn't able to watch all of the series because I was climbing volcanoes in East Java during the week. But what did you make of New Zealand's performance actually after? Okay, yes, we lost off the very last ball in the first match, which we really should have won. Let's be fair. But after that, I mean, we weren't even really playing. I mean, they're resting like Lockie Ferguson, who was probably our best player in the first two matches. What did you make of the whole approach of New Zealand towards this T20 series, and does it smack of the fact that actually New Zealand doesn't really care about internationals for the Chapel Hadley Trophy, which was on the line?
Yeah, I think it was an odd performance in a way. There was, the mix of teams, as you said, Lockie Ferguson. I think some of the Aussies would love to see him in a test side, bowling in the Ashes, for example. You imagine him swinging the ball around at Lords, for example. I think he'd be, sorry, the Ashes, in just playing against England over there. It'd be great to see him for New Zealand over time. It seems like the side was, a bit mixed. The batting wasn't too crash hot. The bowling was effective, I think, but they would say it's a bit under par, as you say, and maybe they're prioritising other things. They've just come off the back of that series against South Africa, obviously as a test series, which was also a bit of an odd one. Andy, as I'm sure you agree. But Devon Conway obviously copped a knock on his thumb, was it right? And looks to be out. What do you think about that for the impact to the side in the top order?
Yeah, well, it was really unfortunate timing from Conway, or for Conway to get that injury, because he'd been woefully out of form. I mean, he basically played non-stop in 2023. Pretty much played the entire year, and of course a lot of that's by his own choice. He decided to play in the 100. He decided to play in Major League Cricket. Played pretty much all of New Zealand matches um, last year, and then after the World Cup, they rested him, and he was probably due a rest anyway, because by virtue of the volume of cricket that he had played. But also his form. He scored that brilliant 150 in the first match of the World Cup against England, when him and Ravindra took New Zealand to a 9-wicket victory. But then after that, he virtually didn't get a run for the rest of the tournament. And then they rested him for the home series against Bangladesh, which finished just prior to New Year. They brought him back for the Pakistan T20 series. Didn't get any runs there either, and then he got COVID. So that very first match of this T20 series that's just finished against Australia, he got a really nice 60, with him and Ravindra both getting 60s in that match. And then he gets injured, and it could. Oh, sorry. I totally missed the point that he also failed badly in the two tests against South Africa. Um, so he got that 60 against Australia. So he looked to be coming back into form, and then he gets a knock on his thumb, which looks like it might keep him out of the first test against Australia, which is coming up very shortly in Wellington, his home ground, of course. So terrible timing for that injury, and also very damaging to New Zealand's prospects, Rob,
Yeah.
for this first test. I mean, if you take Conway out of the side, I mean, he's probably not the first guy picked, because that's obviously Kane Williamson, the absolute master of world cricket at the moment. But Conway's probably the next guy that you would name first, just simply because he's been such a great player over the last 2 to 3 years since he made his debut. So from my perspective as a Kiwi fan, I'm very nervous about whether he's going to be fit or not, and if he's not fit, I mean, who replaces him? So yeah, unbelievably bad timing for Conway, getting that injury.
Yeah, it's a shame, and we wouldn't want to see that on our side either. And so it does create some complication down the road. But we'll see what the selectors do. I think Australia will look to capitalise, right? They'll say, "Look, great, here's a chance to have someone who's not as experienced. They're exposed to our bowling attack, which is still pretty strong on the tests, obviously. So, I think Australia will sympathise, but very quickly get over that and start to think of ways to exploit it. So, looking forward to seeing how that plays out in the tests. And as per usual, cricket is a game that throws up lots of quirks and funny scenarios and weird blends of teams that makes life interesting. So we'll see how it goes.
I just wanted to pick up on something else you said just a moment ago, Rob. You mentioned Lockie Ferguson, and he went through a real lean patch. I was in the Caribbean a couple of years ago, about 18 months ago actually, and he just looked very ordinary. Okay, albeit this is in T20s and one day internationals, just very ordinary. But he just looks like he's coming into some really good form. I mean, I think what did he get, like 4 for 13 or something the other day off 3.5 overs
Mm.
in a relatively high scoring T20 match. And I had this discussion on another show just over a year ago um, with a friend of mine, Adam Bell. And Adam was asking the question, why isn't Lockie Ferguson playing longer form cricket anymore? And because his first class record is actually really good, but he just doesn't play it anymore. And I just sort of wonder, like, well, why is that? I mean, it's not, New Zealand's not blessed with bowling stocks like, perhaps Australia is, or England is, or, India even. Um, and with the Test series coming up against Australia, Lockie Ferguson in form with his pace, the ability to unsettle batsmen. He's able to bowl at 145 kilometres per hour. I'd just love to see him play in the longer form, but I just wonder what your opinion is on players such as Ferguson that sort of become specialists in I mean, bearing in mind he's a centrally contracted player as well. Um,
Mm-hmm.
they sort of become specialists, or choose to, or for whatever reason, don't play. In this case, first class cricket and potentially Test cricket. I mean, does that make sense in your mind? I mean, as an Aussie, with it, with basically you're not going to be facing him in the Test series. Um, why do you think that would be, and do you think that's a good thing for the game of cricket generally?
I think he's just someone who's potentially not as enchanted by Test cricket as others are. I wonder if he sees himself increasingly, narrowing himself to be a specialist bowler in the short form, and he's not alone there. There's probably every bowler would question whether they should flip to the professional money side of the game and double down on the growth area of the game where they can make a longer career that's more lucrative. And I wouldn't say he's a person who's chasing money necessarily, but maybe he just sees that's the smarter play for him personally. And he'll have a very busy schedule if he does that for a while. But you would imagine the call to a Test team, regardless of whether you want to, you've done it before and don't want to do it again, or you hadn't planned to, would be too hard to resist. You'd think of any player, but that's something he's obviously got in mind. He, what is he now? 30 years old or so. I'm not sure how old he is, but
Yeah,
he's at a
about that, I think.
crossroads per se. Yeah, so he's probably a bit of a crossroads there. As a fast bowler, you think, well, if I'm going to play Test and everything else, that's going to wear his body down within 3 or 4 years. Whereas maybe he thinks, like a Dan Christian did, who's an Aussie who's played every T20 league in the world and pretty much won every one of them at some point, and he played until he was late 30s. So maybe he thinks of himself like that as a potential candidate for a longer career in a shorter form, and that means therefore he does really well in T20s and looks like an all-round format kind of guy, but is choosing to stay in a different format. I don't know. Be keen to know if the local press in New Zealand have a view on that, or if people in the audience can tell us more.
Yeah, look, as I say, it's just something that Adam Bell mentioned to me about a year ago, and when he did mention it, it sort of took me by surprise slightly because I'm just not used to him playing. I don't even know if he's played any Test cricket. I mean, he probably has. I just can't remember back that far. But I did have a look at his first class record. I mean, he averages 24 in first class cricket, so he's
Yeah,
obviously decent. But it's just interesting to see, fan groups such as one I'm in on in New Zealand, which is the one that Adam runs. And everyone says, "Oh, his body wouldn't be able to hold up," but it's like, well, but how do we know that?
yeah.
They just say that. It's not like it's been proven. It's just, yeah, no, he couldn't do that. But anyway, we can move on from that. But I do
Well,
take your point.
I'll add, Andy, that he has played one Test. I read here, and he played it in Perth and didn't last the test because of a calf strain. So maybe he's a bit cursed in that format. Who knows?
Possibly. I mean, I guess he's done the opposite of Stuart Broad and Jimmy Anderson, right? They decided to focus on Test cricket. He's decided to focus on something else.
Mm-hmm.
But just going back to this issue of New Zealand not playing its best players. So, for example, Kane Williamson didn't play in the T20 series, and Daryl Mitchell hasn't played all of it either. Bolt's obviously played some of it, but not all of it. Well, what do you think about the New Zealand coaching approach? And I know that Gary Stedder's the coach of all the teams, you know, the T20 team, the one day international team, and the Test side. And it's the same for Australia with Andrew McDonald. It's the same with India with Rahul Dravid. Of course, England's the exception to that of the sort of the bigger sides or the ones that play the most, with having Brendan McCullum for the Test side, and then the Aussie chap, whose name just escapes me just at the moment, who does the
Matthew Mott.
Matthew
Yep.
Mott, yeah, who takes the limited overs sides. Stead's been around a long time. Do you think it's healthy for New Zealand cricket to have this, you know, long-standing coach and having this sort of ingrained policy now of not playing players at certain times and resting them? And because I can't actually remember the last time we, apart from the World Cup, of course, that we actually fielded our full strength side against anyone. What do you make of his sort of approach?
Well, I think it's this awkward balance between continuity and something new, right? And managing a workload as well. And I think you're not going to get a fresh set of ideas if you've got the same people in charge for many years with the same group of players. You're going to be repeating the same things that maybe you've done well in the past. And so by adding some new voices and a new approach that specializes in a certain format, you think that would make a lot of sense. And you know, in a country like Australia, that obviously cricket is you know, a huge sport, and we're one of the big three, if you call it that. Yeah, we've not done that either. So it's funny that it hasn't come to that. I would have thought that would make a lot of sense to split these things out. Maybe it's a funding issue, or it's about the familiarity with the squads that maybe look the same between Test and One Day anyway. In Australia, they look quite different, right? The team that went to the World Cup versus the Test team, you know, it's probably only got 50% of overlap, and so it's quite different, and quite different pace of development and, you know, maturity of the squads as well. Test team is a long-term play, you would say. It's a 2 or 3 year or 5 year generational play. The one day formats and the short formats are going to be really sort of high velocity, high intensity for short bursts of time to win a tournament, to win a series, and constant talent sort of rotates through. So, can the one coach handle both of that? I don't think so. Should they try a different format in New Zealand? I think so. They should. But I guess there's something deeper there that maybe you can tap into that's close to the New Zealand psyche or the way they manage their cricket down there. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I did hear a while ago. I was listening to. I'm just trying to remember. I think it was during the Australia-Pakistan second or third test, or might have been the second test. I think, and Ian Smith was commentating for SEN in Australia, and the question was posed to him at the time, like, you know, why doesn't New Zealand get, you know, someone like Brendan McCullum or Stephen Fleming or Daniel Vittori or, you know, someone of that sort of generation and caliber to maybe coach some of the sides. You know, maybe it's just the T20 side or whatever. And he said, "Oh, they just can't afford them." Um, and I posted this comment in a Facebook group, Adam Bell's group, which has got about 6,500 fans. So, you know, it's a pretty right place for comment, and everyone's like,
Mm.
that's just rubbish, you know, like that's not the reason at all. I mean, do you think Stephen Fleming's really after the money to coach New Zealand? Of course he's not. I mean, he coaches the Chennai Super Kings. He coaches the Texas Super Kings, I think it is, in the MLC. He's got loads of other business interests. That's not the issue at all. I think it's just purely a reluctance by New Zealand cricket, which has generally been very conservative in their appointments of coaches. And Stead's been there for about 6 years now, I think. He recently signed another contract, which goes through to about 2025, I think. So I don't think we're going to see any change soon, but as a fan, mainly, I mean, I was so annoyed that Ravindra didn't get picked for the Bangladesh series. He's just become a world superstar at the World Cup, and then he doesn't play. And
Yeah.
it was just mad. But anyway, just thinking about the Test series that's coming up. But just before we get to the Test series, we can't escape this radio show without talking about our good friend David Warner.
There we go.
He's just unbelievable, that guy. And so just for the fans that are listening, or the listeners to the show that perhaps don't know the history of what we're talking about, David Warner arrives in New Zealand, and for whatever reason, he's the guy that does the press conference before the T20 series. So this was going back about 10 days ago. And he has a crack because he actually played for Northern Districts during the New Zealand Super Smash back in 2009. And Northern Districts, which is one of the New Zealand provinces, had a match against Otago, and they were playing in a town called Oamaru, which is probably not very well known to New Zealand listeners, but it's basically north of Dunedin, south of Christchurch. And Warner, for whatever reason, decided to say, it's a bit of a dump, basically.
Yeah.
And then he went on to say, New Zealand fans, they get very personal and it's a bit vulgar. I mean, can you believe some of the stuff that comes out of this guy's mouth? Which I'm sure you can, because he does it all the time. But why is it, Rob? Is it because he's the least intelligent cricketer probably on the planet? Or is this some sort of carefully planned strategy that he's coming up with?
I think he just is assuming the role of being the team instigator of these things, right? He's happy to play the role of being the one who stirs the pot quite a lot. And whether Australia needs it or not, I'm not sure if he asked permission for that. But I find it a bit of an archaic way of doing things. I know it's a competitive world, and these guys aren't friends necessarily, and you're supposed to create some distance mentally between you and your opponent. But it just sort of comes back to bite you so often. You think, well, don't you sort of realise that this is what happens? Doesn't it become clear that these things come back to haunt you when you don't perform well or the team loses? And yeah, I will say the team is on the pitch, Andy. I'm not sure if you agree, but on the pitch we probably aren't as strong as we were with him in the side, to be honest, on the test side particularly. But off the pitch and just reputationally, I just think it's a nice thing that he's on the way out for that. It just doesn't help. And I think the couple of the New Zealand crowds gave him a good send off the other day when he went out relatively cheaply, and he was giving you a bit of it back as well. So it's good banter until it becomes annoying, which I think it probably is.
Yeah, well, I mean, also, I think the other thing with David Warner is that I don't think he appreciates, or this is why I question his level of intelligence, because he's probably the most hated Australian cricketer in New Zealand, and I'm not sure if you're familiar with the Alternative Commentary Collective, which is basically as it suggests, it's not the mainstream commentary, but they're actually an official partner of New Zealand cricket now, and they call him a wounder, and he just played into their hands because they call him Davy Dum Dum, right?
Really?
And this has basically been going on ever since the sandpaper issue in Cape Town, which is 2018, so almost 4 years, almost 6 years ago. So he just walked straight into this trap, and that's why I question the guy's intelligence. It's like, if you wanted to annoy people in a way that's going to make your life a misery, you couldn't have done it any better. But actually, that's the one thing. But actually, the other thing that was quite funny was, and I don't have the direct quote here, but the mayor of Oamaru, so this is before the match started, said, well, as it happens, we have the best Mitre 10, which is a big hardware store in New Zealand. We have the best and biggest mitre 10 in the whole of the country. We have a range of sandpaper and other abrasive products, which we know Mr. Warner's very familiar with.
Oh, that joke will never get too old either. That's a good thing about it, is that it'll keep me around them forever, and it is good fuel, though, I must say. So fair play to the mayor with that one.
Yeah.
So yeah,
It's brilliant stuff, wasn't it? I thought it was absolutely a great riposte from the mayor of Oamaru, which,
yeah.
by the way, for listeners, is probably a town of about, I don't know, maybe 30,000 or something. I think it just qualifies as a city. It's not like in England with, a cathedral determines whether you're a city or not, but it's there or thereabouts. But hey, let's change tack, Rob. The India England series, the fourth test is on in Ranchi at the moment, and later today it looks like India is going to cruise to victory again. And that England was in a very strong position after the first innings. They scored, what did they score, about 350 or thereabouts, and then India replied, I think, with 307, and then England collapsed pretty badly or woefully yesterday afternoon on Sunday. And I think India needs about another 120 odd to win the match. Rohit's cruising along on 24 not out or something already. Jaiswal's been in great form. And I just, but I've got a question more generally for you. This Bazball thing, right? And the history of Bazball is, or the word I'm talking about, it was just something thrown out by Andrew Miller, the editor at Cricket Info, on a podcast. But the word stuck. But what I'm wondering about is this, but by calling England's approach since Brendan McCullum and Ben Stokes took over, coming up 2 years ago, by calling, we're Bazballing now, we're not Bazballing now. Do you think this sort of obsession with this word actually detracts from the actual cricket that England play? Because as Brendan McCullum has said right from the start, this is nonsense. It's such a derogatory term. It doesn't take into account at all how Ben Stokes thinks about playing the match, how he speaks to the players, how he prepares. But it's like this outside noise of this Bazball. Is this just like a distraction? And as I say, does it detract from what they actually do? What's your opinion on that?
Oh, it's hard to know what the truth is, because when you watch the commentary and you see the ex players and the media talking about it seems this absolutely crystal clear, and the word is brand of cricket that New Zealand have preempted and implemented for the last 2 years, and it's absolutely attached to the transition to Stokes and McCullum, and it's almost like a distillation from the outside. As an Aussie fan, it's a distillation of Brendan McCullum's playing style into his coaching style. It looks like Brendan McCullum out on the pitch in his old little iterations through his players. So it makes sense that that's what it looks like, and it connects to his own career. And the way that he sits on the balcony with his feet up and his sunnies on and he's all pretty confident, that annoys people a little bit. I think that's the thing that, this assumption that it's just the best way to do it and everyone else is a bit wrong. And then Duckett coming out, or someone coming out and saying Jaiswal should take, we should get some credit for the way that Jaiswal's playing.
Isn't that the most ridiculous comment? I mean,
Unbelievable.
that sort of leads on to my next point is England's players feel, it seems to me like they're believing their own hype. And I mean, for Duckett to say that to about Jaiswal, I mean, how derogatory is that? I mean, look, as you know, Rob, I lived in England for 13 years. I'm a massive fan of
Yep.
England cricket. I have been ever since I moved, and I bought a flat on the fifth floor of a building opposite Lord's cricket ground, and I couldn't see the whole ground, but I could see the replay screen. I'm obsessed with England cricket just simply by virtue of living there for so long and becoming a citizen, etc., etc. But I also was in Dominica last year when Jaiswal made his Test debut, made 170 on debut. He had a batting average in first class cricket of of 80 before that. I think he scored 800s or something like that in his first 15 matches in first class cricket. He dominated in the PSL. For Duckett to come out and say England takes credit for Jaiswal scoring a rapid 200, I mean, what on earth is that about? I mean, I'm struggling to not swear at this point. Oh, fuck it, I'll do it anyway. But just, I just feel it's too much, and I think that the positivity, let's call it that, or this endless kind of, oh, we can chase 600, or it doesn't matter how many they get. It's just it's wearing very thin on me right now, and as an Aussie with that whole moral victory thing from the Ashes and everything. I mean, you guys over there in Australia must be just thinking these guys are on another planet or something like that.
Well, I I was almost going to call this the reverse Aussie cricket show because I had as much joy watching England get beat recently by India, and they're going to get beat today, than I did with Australia winning a series. And so it really fuels, it stokes the fire between all of us. You know, it smacks of arrogance that they didn't have under Joe Root. They're a bit more humble. Maybe they just weren't confident either. But now they've got a bit too much the other way, and so they'll get punished for that. And the other thing is, what's the results on the board? They've played well. They've changed the nature of the game, made it more exciting. But have they won trophies since they've become this new team? Have they really delivered the results? They should have won that Ashes series against us there in England, but they didn't. And but morally they did apparently. So I think they are believing the hype a bit too much. Even an India series where they had that first game, that first match win, which is incredible. That's probably helped them feel like the rest of the series is something they can let go because they've won something, won a match over there. And so I'm worried that the Bazball sort of hype and phenomenon masks the truth of the actual numbers. Like Joe Root playing dumb shots, and even though he said that he was in complete control, he would never have played that 2 years ago. So I think it's affecting their team on a DNA level that might be something that is hard to undo.
Yeah, I mean, in this particular match, Duckett's obviously not had a great match. He did play one brilliant innings. Zach Crawley's actually played quite well in this series. He scored another 60 in the second innings yesterday. Ollie Pope had that brilliant knock in the first test. He's got a pair in this match. So I sort of with you that the consistency is not there. Okay, Ben Stokes has been very unlucky in this test. He's got two terrible deliveries in both innings.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
and a lot of the pressure's fallen on Ben Folkes, who's not really an out and out attacking player, and never will be. But I suppose from England's perspective, there's actually been some positive signs. We should also not forget they've gone in with a really inexperienced attack, right? I mean, apart from James Anderson, who's played about 1 million Test matches, they've had such an inexperienced attack. So they've done relatively well to compete with India, who, by the way, have been pretty badly under strength. And there's been some great performances. Tom Hartley in that first test in the second innings. Rayan Ahmed hasn't done that well, and he's obviously gone home now. But Bashir, he got 5 wickets. He's only played 6 first-class matches. So they have competed pretty well, but I just think they've talked themselves up way too much. And what you were just saying about the numbers, I think it was Michael Vaughan, or Rent-a-Quote as I like to call him. He actually made quite a good point the other day. He said, "Look, this Bazball thing, it's fine, but actually, England, after they beat Pakistan in Pakistan 3-0, which was a brilliant series victory, they drew with New Zealand, they drew with Australia, and now they're getting turned over by India. So perhaps that first summer, that initial summer with beating New Zealand and beating India, Bairstow getting those 400s, etc., a couple of years ago. Since then, as you say, the results actually haven't been that good.
yeah. And at some point, I remember Nasser Hussain saying, I think it was at the end of the Ashes series, saying, it's all great to have this new style, regardless of the outcome, which is sort of something that they've hinted at. And NASA said, I'm sorry, it's about the wins. It's about winning the game. You win, you adapt, and you win the game how you need to. I mean, a good team should adapt. So I love the fact that they're doubling down on their whole style. But if it's not working, what do you do? Do you keep doing that? Do you do something else? It's like a football team in soccer playing the same style every single game, which is what Tottenham are doing now with the Aussie manager, which I love, but it can be deadly at times, right? It can expose you. And so at some point, the appetite for that, the English fans will start saying, yeah, but where are the trophies that we were sort of
Yeah.
promised subconsciously that should have just been happening without even noticing?
Yeah. Look, I'm with you on that. Okay. Anyway, we could talk about this forever, but no, they're just starting to annoy me a little bit. But and I think also it's a little bit unfair, particularly on the younger players, like the younger bowlers, that the bowlers toil away. I think Bashir bowled, I don't know, like 32 overs or something the other day, and then the batsmen then go out and try and slog it and just get out. Although I must say, the class of Joe Root, though, right? Score that 100 in the first innings and just play absolutely beautifully. And Ben Folkes supported him with 30 something, 32 or thereabouts. Just shows that they can adapt. If they get their mentality right. But it's like anything. If you put ideas into players' heads, just go out there and be free and play your natural game, which is what Brendan McCullum basically did until he was about 31 when he played for New Zealand. And it was only later in his career when he realised that he wasn't going to be a wicketkeeper anymore and he was a top order batsman. That's when he started making the big runs. He got that triple century against India, and he got a couple of double hundreds as well. So I think Brendan after this tour might have to sit down and have an honest conversation with one of his racehorses or something, and just say, "Oh, perhaps we've overdone it a little bit." But hey, I wanted to talk about something else, Rob. Is DRS, right? Just in the last week or so, we've seen in the PSL, Shadab Khan be very critical of DRS. Ben Stokes was saying, umpires' call should be scrapped, and it's all because of, let's say, a decision's made on DRS, but everyone knows that it's probably not right. So my question is, should they make some changes to DRS, or should they just get rid of it? I mean, I know that's probably never going to happen, but I also saw a situation last year in Pakistan when I was there in Karachi, when I forget who the batsman was, the Kiwi batsman, but Safraz Khan, the wicketkeeper, took a catch. He didn't even appeal. When I say he took a catch, he collected the ball, and he didn't appeal or anything. DRS showed it being out, and on review. And Safraz was like, he didn't hit that, but okay, I'll take it anyway. So,
Yeah.
do you think DRS is helping or hampering the game at the moment?
The fear is that when you implement technology like this, it's technology you can't really question the accuracy of it, because behind the technology is code and science and maths that is beyond the quick reaction on the field, right? So you take that information as correct, but then the ambiguity comes when you give it labels like umpire's call, or 50% of the balls hitting the stump, therefore it must be out if it's 51%, it's not out if it's 49%. And I guess the explanation that Nasser Hussain has given about this is pretty good, which talks about the DRS is a projection of the ball hitting the bat or the ball hitting the stumps, right? It's a projection of what would happen if the ball continued in the same way, moving the trajectory it was going in. Therefore, it's not actually real or true. That's why the margin of error is then given back to the umpire's call to say, well, a human therefore can be responsible for what we think will be within that margin of error. The umpire's made a call that's the original intent, is to give the umpire the benefit of the doubt. Therefore, the umpire's call is something that we hand back to the field. I can see why it's frustrating, though, because isn't the computer better than an umpire? Would say Ben Stokes. Just say it's out or not. So it's going to be confusing. I think the responsibility needs to be on the players to either accept that that's what it is or to suggest an improvement. And scrapping, I don't think will ever happen because it's just too ingrained. It's too accurate. It's there's too much riding on these results. So I think it's going to be difficult to undo it. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, obviously they're not going to scrap it. I mean, you look at someone like Graham Swan. I mean, he played as an off-break bowler. He played in an era with DRS, and he's openly said, if I didn't have DRS, I would have got way less wickets. Nathan Lyon would be another guy that you can think of. You think of all those ones, it's going down, it's going down. And he's like, no, it's not. And DRS has proved that it's not going down. So we know that's not going to happen, but I've just felt for a year or so now that there's something unreliable about it. And I use that Safraz example where clearly the New Zealand guy didn't hit it, but DRS said he did. So, yeah, I mean, I guess it's something I need to keep working on. And also it's consistency, right? Like, I've actually met the DRS guys. I've met them in Pakistan, but they don't. But there's a bunch of different production crews, so it's not exactly the same standard everywhere. So I guess they just need to keep enhancing it. And, I think Ben Stokes, when he made that comment that, umpire school should be scrapped, he said it right after a test loss. And, he probably, when he woke up the next morning, he probably thought, that wasn't perhaps the smartest thing to say, but that's life. But look, Rob, I think that's about all we've got time for today. I know you need to get back to your desk. So thanks very much for joining me on this initial edition of the World Cricket Show. Rob and I are going to be coming to you every Monday at this time. So wherever you're listening, whether you're in Canada at 8 o'clock at night or somewhere else in the middle of the night driving a truck or whatever it might be, we look forward to joining you again next week. So from me and Rob here on the World Cricket Show on Global Cricket Radio, we'll catch you next time.